Hello and welcome to the On the Couch podcast, the podcast that gives you the view from the therapist chair. I'm your host, John Dennis, a licensed professional counselor. You're listening to OTC episode 69 with Joe Sanok, author of Thursday is the New Friday. Welcome back again, OTC listeners. Bringing another episode. Thank you for stopping by my little corner of the podcast world. So, with this episode, sharing another conversation I was honored to have with Joe Sanok. For those of you that have listened to the show, Joe first was on in season 1, episode 10. And he is the host of the Practice podcast. He has a new book that's coming out, launching in October, and that is Thursday is the New Friday. So talking all about just how to really maximize your work and your play and, really having that balance and really looking at the work week and our understanding of it. And why is it that way? Is that the best way? So we're going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway here on the podcast. The first 5 listeners that email in will get a brand new copy free of Thursday is the New Friday, which launches October 5th. So the first 5 listeners to email in to otcpodcast@parentfamilysolutions.com will get a free copy of the book. And just drop Thursday is the New Friday in the subject line. All right. In addition to that, anyone who has implemented Thursday is the New Friday or the 4-day work week can go to the podcast website at pfsonthecouch.com. And you can click on the speak pipe and leave a message telling your story of how you implemented it and how it's impacted your life. And any message that I get, I'll include in a future episode. All right. Anybody who's not familiar with Joe, check him out. Go to joesanok.com, so JOESANOK, or you can check out his podcast at practiceofthepractice.com. And I mean, he has just this awesome story. I mean, he talks a lot about his career path and, starting off with a mental health degree and working as a therapist in a college counseling setting. And then, getting to a place where he stepped out on his own, kind of dipped his foot in the private outpatient practice space, and started to grow that more and more to the point where it didn't make sense to stay at the position he was at anymore. And so he went out on his own and then started to grow that and started hiring independent contractors and growing it into a large group practice and starting the podcast and then, growing that little by little, more and more, starting to get sponsors and getting, just a huge collection of world changers as guests. Just check out the library of episodes that he's had and the amazing guests that he's had on. And since then, starting to implement a 4-day work week and a 3-day weekend and slowing down and speeding up and through his slow down school and killing it camp workshops that he hosts. And, so that idea that he has actually lived this, it's not just something that he came up with. It's something that he has been putting into practice for a couple of years now. And just seeing the benefits that has had for him and for others as well. And then this was something that once I read the book and, got a chance to talk with Joe, it's something I really challenged myself to implement over the summer. And I have to tell you, it was scary at first. Yeah, that idea of like, oh gosh, am I going to be able to do this? Is this going to work? What will happen financially? Of course, on paper, the concept sounds great. The idea of having 3 days off sounds amazing, but it's not just, okay, we're just going to do it. It's really being intentional about it and having to block that out, and also making sure that I'm working the days that I'm scheduled and when I should be. And not just like, oh, okay, it's complete vacation time all the time, and the way that impacted my own mental health and my time with my family, was so eye-opening, and really just, kind of that like, why haven't I been doing this all along? Like, I could have been doing this for years now. And I think Joe talks about that in our conversation and in his book of, yeah, we just kind of got set on this 2-day work weekend. It wasn't always that way. And that's some of what I love about the research that he's done is, really looking at the history of where that has come from. But we've just kind of always accepted like, oh, this is the way it is, 5-day work week, 2-day weekend, and, living for the weekend, that we just, kill ourselves in this rat race and, never really question what goes into it, or is this the best way? And, I encourage you to take a look at the book that Joe has put out. It's just, it's such an amazing book, and the impact that it can have on our mental health, burnout, and just our work-life balance, time with family. It's just so crucial to really take a look at these concepts and look at putting them into practice, not just like, oh yeah, that sounds great. How am I ever going to be able to do that? But actually look at that, ask those questions, and implement it. And you'll see for yourself the difference that it makes. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode. All right, on the couch listeners, I'm honored to have Joe Sanok here again. So I think you were the first one twice in one season. So
Right.
I don't know if you're honored, but I'm honored. Author of Thursday is the New Friday. So welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, John.
Yeah, I gotta say, I have with the book, I have this picture of you with like the Weekend at Bernie's, like Hawaiian shirt and a mustache with just like the wave, like. Yeah, so we were talking a little bit last time off of the Leave to Find adventures, the 7-day work week, just the 5-day work week, the 7-day week. I mean, all of it just kind of arbitrary, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point. We think about just in nature why we have the calendar we have. And when I entered into this book, I'm thinking, okay, I'm talking about Thursday being the new Friday. I probably should understand, like, where do we even get the week or the month or all of this? So, I mean, the year makes sense. We go around the sun. The month is, basically lines up with moon cycles. The day, the earth rotates. Those all make sense in nature. But when you actually look at the week, it was the Babylonians that came up with the 7-day work week. The Romans actually had a 10-day week. The Egyptians had an 8-day week. And so the 7-day week, there's nothing in nature that actually says it should be a 7-day week. So it was totally the Babylonians thousands of years ago that they decided on a 7-day week. And so fast forward to the late 1800s, I love history and understanding the context of where we get things. And most people worked 6 or 7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day. That was kind of the average schedule, as the Industrial Revolution was kind of kicking off, as people were rebuilding Chicago after the fire. There was all sorts of protests about just how much people were working. And so for me to think through, okay, we've got this 40-hour work week, to go from 6 or 7 days a week working to then a 40-hour work week. I mean, that's a huge step forward in just the evolution of business. And so when Henry Ford in 1926 said, all right, you only have to work 40 hours, because he wanted to sell more cars to his own people. He wanted people to have recreation. Like, if you don't have a weekend or you don't have an evening, like, why do you need a car? Like, you're not going to have
Such a
any time.
generous guy.
He's such a generous guy that, why don't you just sell a bunch more cars to his own employees? But then it took off. And so this thing that's less than 100 years old feels so core to us that it's, this 40-hour work week. That's just how it's always been. But the reality is, we made up the 7-day week. We made up the 40-hour week. We can then say, is this even how we want to live our lives? Does this really even align with what we feel deep down in regards to how we spend our time and how we work?
Yeah. As we were talking about it, and when I was reading through, I remembered a story Dave Ramsey talks about with, I think, essentially just like, yeah, where have we gotten these, traditions or ways of doing things? And a lot of times people don't know. They just, well, I always did it this way because that's how my mom always did it. And, yeah, it just nobody really questioning, okay, well, is this really a good thing? It definitely seems like it's not a great thing to have only 2-day weekends. Yeah, what do you say to that question of like, why not?
Yeah, I think, the average person, when I tell them about the book, they say a 3-day weekend would be awesome. That'd be great. I would love that. Maybe I can get my boss to switch things up, but then the next question is always, well, how do we do that? How do we justify taking a 20% cut? If we're working 4 days, then, the typical person says, well, that's a 20% loss in profits. That's a 20% loss in productivity. It's 20% loss. How do I justify that? The research just doesn't support that. I mean, if we even think about, I remember when I worked at the community college, Fridays were a bit of a blow off day. That's when there would be baby showers. It's when we celebrate birthdays. It's, everyone's a little bit lower key. They're not getting as much done. Maybe they're getting some texts from their partner about what's up for the weekend. Are you going to pick up coleslaw for the barbecue? Like, whatever. And we really saw that whole TGIF thing started to creep in the 80s, and even TGI Friday, with ABC and Full House and all that. It's like, I remember my dad would get home on Fridays and he'd play the Blues Brothers and we'd dance, and it was like the weekend has started. But people were kind of piecing out mentally, from Fridays. They already are. And so when we actually look at productivity, there's a number of great case examples I talk about in the book, of how actually productivity oftentimes goes up, creativity often goes up when people can just kind of work hard for 4 days instead of kind of doing it over 5 days and then having Friday just be less productive. So there's even an example in the book I talk about, Kalamazoo Valley Community College, which, when you think about like the average institution, that it would be very hard to have a 4-day work week. A community college is pretty set. I mean, that's pretty crazy that a community college decided to do 4-day work weeks. Well, it actually was an HVAC instructor who he looked at how much AC they were spending money on in the summertime. He started taking pictures of the parking lot all summer, one summer, which is so forward thinking. They like a year ahead of time, he's just like, okay, I'm going to make the case for the 4-day week.
Yeah.
And he looked at how much they were spending on AC. And when they switched over to a 4-day week, they saved millions in just their AC. And then you look at healthcare costs, you look at staff satisfaction, you look at even student retention, where students can come, into the office at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening in the summertime. There's some people that maybe want to come in later and work later, and other people that wish they could come in earlier. And so there's expanded schedules for that Monday through Thursday where there's more flexibility. And I think that's really what we're moving towards in regards to looking at just business in general. This new evolution of what the next phase of business is going to be.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that and reading in the book that idea of saving millions on AC. I mean, yeah, and that obviously then like electrical, all the other ramifications of that. And I think so often You'll hear those studies come out on just the work day and like the hours that it's at, and versus education, and when kids, brains, what's optimal for their brain to be learning. Um, and then it kind of always defaults back to, well, yeah, but we'll never get the work world to change. Like it's just always going to be that way. Um, how do we get people to change?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think we're in the kind of messy middle right now between the industrialists who, the industrialists were needed in a number of ways to go from we're working, 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. Of course, that needed to change. So Henry
mhm.
Ford and all the industrialists gave us a gift for that time. Now, do we still believe that people are just cogs in a wheel that are replaceable? Do we still believe that, if someone gets hired for one job, that's the only job they should do for their entire career? No, like we've shifted over the last 100 years. And so I would actually say that, businesses that view people less as a cog, or how the industrialists view people, that push back on that and really start to view their staff as an organism, those are the ones that we're seeing be more and more successful. So even practically, how does that look like with practice of the practice? So every year I talk to my contractors about a couple questions. And this is a great question for people to ask their clinical staff or their executive assistant. First question is, what's one thing that you absolutely love doing? Or what's a handful of things that you just love doing, these items that you would never want them taken off your plate? Second,
You're saying within work,
within
right?
work. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
What are the things also that you hate doing? And third, what are areas that you want to grow in or learn or expand? So I think about Sam, who's been with me the longest. She's our chief marketing officer. She started out just making images for Twitter and Instagram that had kind of inspirational quotes. That's all she did at the very beginning, was that. And then she said, I'd like to do more with show notes. And then she eventually didn't want to do show notes for the podcast. And so we hired Sam R to do that. And then she said, I want to go through some training to learn how to do video editing. I wanted to grow a YouTube channel. So I put her through, a training on that. And so over time, she's been able to take things that she doesn't like as much off her plate, and add things in that she does. So kind of creating her ideal position, knowing that who she was 5 years ago when she joined me is way different than who she is now. And smart companies will help those people not make more money just by becoming a supervisor, because there's people like Sam that are creative and artistic, and sure, she oversees people, but she doesn't want to be just a supervisor to make more money. And so uh, when we see this in companies where they really view their staff as an organism that can evolve, it's amazing to see the creativity that happens as a result of that, and the agility that happens.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, you think of a lot of those polls on the best places to work, the Googles, the Apples, the things like that. And I love the idea that you referenced of the, it's your version of like stop, start, keep doing. Yeah, what are, you don't want to just keep giving your people the biggest problems, because you'll burn them out. And like you said, when they feel like they're not just a replaceable cog, when they feel valued. I forget the name of the study, but where all they did was like they changed the lighting,
Hmm.
and the workers are like, oh, they care about us. Like they fixed the light bulbs. Yeah, it helps them to be more passionate about their work. It's that making your vocation your vacation kind of concept. Um, and so you were saying, just even asking those simple questions each year, and starting to tailor towards that. Um, are there other things you would suggest businesses start to implement? Yeah, start to do.
Yeah, I mean, towards the beginning of the book, I go into kind of individuals' internal inclinations, and so there's three internal inclinations that research shows make for the most successful entrepreneurs. And so really the book is aimed at the individual. And if the individual changes and thinks differently, then that's going to help the collective. That's going to help the business. It's going to help in a lot of different ways. And so I really focus on what are the individual tools, whether you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're within a business, so you're an intrapreneur, maybe you are a practice owner, maybe you work at a practice, that it helps people no matter what. And so those three internal inclinations, the first is curiosity. The second is an outsider perspective. And the third is the ability to move on it. And so if you can first see if these inclinations come naturally, that's what I kind of walk through in those chapters is, does curiosity come naturally to you? Is that something that just you don't really have to work on? Or is it something that needs some fostering and needs to have some exercises to help you be more curious? And then we want to see if there's actions that support that curiosity, and are there habits that support it? Because sure, you can have some actions, but they aren't long-term habits and they're not kind of long-term mindsets. And so when we look at curiosity, just being able to enter into things from a curious perspective instead of from a black and white perspective. And so, oftentimes business folks are highly competitive people. They're people that want to achieve. A lot of us kind of went into the counseling field, but then we're like, oh, it's kind of fun to start a practice and grow a practice and all of this. But we often see things as black and white. So we may do a Facebook ads campaign and then we spend all this money and nothing converts. Or we may have spent a bunch of time on blogs and then you look at the numbers and 3 people have read it and you're like, that's a failure. Versus if I'm curious about that, if I'm curious about how I enter into each of these new projects, to say it's just giving me data. And if I see that's interesting, that's going to take me down some paths that open up things that maybe I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, just starting to like be curious about that and shifting your mindset. I know for myself, yeah, I've struggled with like, I could never, you know, adopt a 4-day work week, and sort of shooting myself down before, like, why not? Why, like, what, almost a, like, what do you have to lose? So you like try it out. I imagine most people aren't going to be like, this sucks. Like, I'm going back. I'm going to do 6 days instead. Like, yeah. So it's the just like starting to shift that perspective, and being willing to kind of question it, with your own life, and adopting this. I mean, I've seen for you, really trying to fill up that time with things that matter to you. And I know you've said this before of like, okay, if I'm going to be, devoting the time to this blog post or to whatever, it really needs to matter, or I need to be doing something else. Yeah. Can you kind of speak to, okay, what do you fill the time with? What do you focus
Yeah.
on?
And I think that kind of what you're touching on kind of before that question is the idea of either pass fail versus an experimental mindset. And so even the idea of saying, hey, for the summer, I'm going to just take Fridays off and see what happens. And then at the end of the summer, we can look at the numbers, we can look at whatever, and whoever are important people in your life, it could be a partner, it could be, a co-business partner, whoever, just say, I'm going to try this for a month or two and just see what happens and see if I'm more productive. And when people take that mindset versus, oh man, I got to switch to the 4-day work week and then it could be a big failure, then you put so much ego into it and you feel like you're a failure because it didn't work out. I do think that
Mm,
the idea of the 4-day week, it's a metaphor for working in a way that aligns with yourself. And so, really thinking through that and understanding that. I think one thing that in your question you're asking about in regards to things outside of work is a tendency we see, especially with Americans, is an overvalue of work and an undervalue of fun or things outside of work. And so
yeah.
it's one thing when you say, I want to take Fridays off. It's a whole nother thing to sign up for a Zumba class or an art class on Fridays so that you can't work. Or to say, I'm not going to do grocery shopping on a Saturday or Sunday because it's crazy because everyone does it then. I'm going to do it on a Friday morning and save myself a bunch of time and actually get the groceries done or get some chores done. So I'm going to block out time to do my chores or errands or all the adulting I need to do. I'm going to pay the bills or whatever you need to do. I'm going to block out that time on a Friday. And so when people start to give that time outside of work a particular label, that's where we see it's a lot easier because then you've assigned that time something to do rather than, okay, it's Friday. I guess I should meditate. I'm supposed to meditate. I guess I should work out. I should work out. I guess I should make a green smoothie. but there's not really a plan for what that Friday is going to look like. And so for a while, it's really helpful for people to block in things that are non-work items. So that could be signing up for a class. That could be, saying on Friday I'm going to do this and have some accountability around it. It could be that you schedule a lunch with a friend that's important to you, or go for a walk, or whatever that thing is. When you schedule it in, it feels harder to move away from than if you just say, I guess Friday I should do something productive.
Mhm. Well, and kind of getting back to that, the movement you're talking about, that the habit forming there, and really blocking it out. Um, and I like I kind of heard the Dave Ramseyism in there of like, telling your money where it should go. That idea of, okay, I'm going to commit to this. And yeah, so often, people, yeah, we just, a lot of times it seems like we don't take the downtime, but then when we have it, we often don't do a lot with it. Like we just, okay, I'll just catch up on Netflix, and then we feel like crap, and then we're like, okay, that doesn't work. So back to work. um, yeah, I liked, especially the idea of like the accountability, and kind of putting it out there of like, okay, I'm gonna, sign up for this class. I always talk about, everybody talks about, I want to run a marathon, well, register for the marathon,
Yeah.
then, plunk down the money and pick a date, and then you'll start training for it, once you put it on the line. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
remember when I turned 40, I had some big goals, and one of them was to do a sprint try. And really, it was because I'm a terrible swimmer. And so I wanted to go from terrible to really bad. So it was like a quarter-mile swim, which I'd never swam that far. And so I signed up for it in like right after my birthday, so in December, and it was, I think, in August. And so
Even in Boy Scouts, you never had to.
I never did the mile swim. I did the like, I whatever it took to get the swimming merit badge. I like did that, but nothing
You're
more.
like, that's it. I'm
All
done.
right, that's it. No, I barely got Eagle Scout because I could barely swim. So like that was by far my hardest merit badge, hands down.
Can I just sail the mile?
I seriously, can I just stand up paddleboard this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so swimming's always been, a struggle for me, and it's never like I haven't been able to overcome it. And so then in that for January and February, I got swim instruction. I texted a friend of mine who had done an Ironman, which is insane. It's like a 2 mile swim, and then you
Yeah.
bike 100 miles, and then you run a marathon. I was like, are there any good apps for kind of training or just learning stroke form? Because I knew I was probably not doing the technique, because I see people swim and they just glide through the water like they're walking. And
It's
I
graceful.
swim like 50 yards, and it's like am dying every breath. And so I had this swim instructor, and she was actually like, you're just, your resting float is about an inch under the water. And I've never seen that before. So I can see why it's hard for you to swim. She's like, take a deep breath. And I still was just like right under the water. And so even the swim instructor
Your
was like,
resting
you,
float is actually drowning.
yeah. She's like, maybe you shouldn't be a swimmer. So, but by doing that, I then just ended up just kind of doing the backstroke, and that was easier, for me. But by signing up for it, to your point, signing up for that sprint try, actually the swim of the three parts of it was the easiest and most relaxing for me, because I knew what my limits were. I knew I sucked at swimming. And so I, did the backstroke, and I didn't care if I placed. I just wanted to finish and not die. Um, so it worked out fine. But when you do that, then that helps me kind of work backward to say, I should probably be in the pool 3 days a week. I should probably be on the treadmill and, doing the biking, and then it fills itself in, versus someday I should do a sprint try. Okay, that someday probably will
Brutal.
never come.
Yeah. The diet starts tomorrow. It's
Right.
always tomorrow. Yeah. Well, for those that, yeah, maybe they are the employee or the contractor, would you recommend kind of going the same route that the guy from Kalamazoo did, where like, okay, gather a little bit of research, obviously get Thursday as the new Friday. You've kind of done the meta analysis and gathered a lot of the research for them, and then make the case on, hey, I want to try this out. You're listening to OTC episode 69 with Joe Sanok, author of Thursday is the New Friday. We'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor.
Would you like to talk to a counselor but can't find the time? Would you rather talk to someone from the comfort of your own home? If so, Parenting and Family Solutions is here to help. We now offer teletherapy to all clients who reside in the state of Pennsylvania. Using our secure portal, you can have a video session with your counselor using a laptop, desktop computer, or smartphone. Visit our website to learn more at www.parentfamilysolutions.com or give us a call at 717-602-5560 to see if teletherapy might be a good fit for you. Let us help you build a stronger family and a healthier you.
For those that, yeah, maybe they are the employee or the contractor, would you recommend kind of going the same route that the guy from Kalamazoo did, where like, okay, gather a little bit of research, obviously get Thursday as the new Friday. You've kind of done the meta analysis and gathered a lot of the research for them, and then make the case on, hey, I want to try this out.
Yeah, there's a whole section in how businesses can think through that, and especially how employees can advocate for it. And that whole experiment mindset really is a great way to do it. To say to your supervisor, I'd like to try something out. I think it's going to actually help with our outcomes, our key performance indicators. You want to be prepared with, hey, this is how I'm going to track it. This is how I'm going to pay attention to it. This is how I'm going to show that I think this is actually better for myself or for the company, or like, what do you get out of it? Can we try it for 2 months? And I actually had a friend follow this, and he's now doing the 4-day work week at a local community college that doesn't, college-wide have a 4-day work week. And so he was able to switch over just by saying, let's experiment for the summer. And the department, he works in the advising department, they wanted to have people work a little bit later in the summertime for students, and they wanted to have different hours for different people. And so for him to negotiate that and basically use my book to give it a test, that's happening all over the country now with people that are kind of taking this mindset. We even look at Spain and Denmark. We have countries that are switching to 4-day work weeks, and so like the revolution is taking off.
What is the TITNF is the
yeah.
That's there you go, the revolution.
yeah, it's cool to see on Instagram how even the hashtag Thursday is the new Friday. I think there's already over 1,000 like uses of it, which I hope they're all associated with me. If not, well, it's helpful either way.
Yeah, there you go. You'll just take it over. That's what you'll do.
Friend Jack.
As they call it, yes. And yeah, again, I think as a dad, I mean, my kids, they, like you said, you referenced like when your dad would play the Blues Brothers, and we typically do like pizza and a movie on Fridays. They're like super stoked for it. They're like, yes, it's Friday, and I think it's so cool to teach that concept to them. It sort of reminds me of Rich Dad Poor Dad, that idea of hey, you can buy that car, you just have to figure out how to afford it, and you can have a 4-day work week, you just have to figure out how to do it. Is that some of what you're teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me as a dad, teaching those independence skills is so important, that you can go after big things. And like my 6-year-old, she really wants to become a DJ, and so my backyard neighbor, he has all the equipment and does sequencing and all that. And so we went over there and had a little like DJ lesson. And it's like, I'm like, man, Burning Man 2024, but the kids tent bumping. But it, that she isn't thinking in the average way of just, that I have to play piano or I have to play violin, or like, if she wanted to do those things, I wouldn't care either. I just think it's good to have some sort of musical inclination. But for me, it's find your weird, find your unique, like go after the things that are interesting, and then let me help you like foster those things. So even the other day, so we're on the road for the whole school year, so we're still road schooling them even though I'm home. I did a unit on storytelling because I was thinking about, like, what's a life skill that if you're good at, like, is going to serve them forever. And I was like, storytelling, like whether it's public speaking or podcasting or just like being a good presenter within an employee capacity, being a good storyteller is really, really important. And so we watched a video breaking down kind of the elements of a story. And then we watched this thing where all of these movie makers, just maybe a 10-minute clip, talked about what makes a good story and, really talk about the conflict of a story and how that's really needed to fuel forward the overall storyline. And then I told them a story about being chased by a wild rhinoceros, and they thought it was hilarious. They'd heard it before, but they liked it again. And then we did some improv games to like practice storytelling and coming up with stories on the fly. And so to make their learning be super applicable and fun, and it's not just this boring school stuff, but it's like when we learn, we get to open up doors for ourselves to do things that are way different than we maybe could have if we didn't know that stuff. So from a young age, being able to think about, what is it that will best position them to create the life that they choose to live, and for them to feel that freedom beyond the box that maybe I was handed because of where society was at. Like as a dad, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. As you were talking, I often reference the comedian Christopher Titus, who he talks about a very different experience as a kid growing up. He describes his father as the most negative superhero on the planet. That every time he was like, "Hey, Dad, I want to do this," and his dad would like crap all over it and just, "No, you can't do that. That'll never work." So yeah, it's so cool to see you. Hey, yeah, if you want to do that, let's find out about it. Let's figure out how to do that. And hey, I have this connection that has all the DJ equipment, and let's do it. That definitely teaches them, yeah, to dream and to go after it, but like how to do it and not just like haphazardly go after it, but to like push all in and commit to it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, every generation of parents has to say, what did we like about the previous generation for our parents, and what do we want to add to that we feel is a little bit more healthy? So even just, I think it was, the parents that grew up as hippies in the 60s and 70s, they brought a lot of love and compassion and hugs in, but they also brought in a lot of that kind of World War II generation, like, I'm the parent, you got to listen to me. And so I don't know about you, but for me, if there was something that my parents said and I wanted to push back on it, I didn't have really an option to push back. It was, I'm the parent. You need to listen to me. It's dinner time now. I don't care what level you're on in Nintendo, like right now. But in our family, one thing that I often say is you always have three options. So if I say it's dinner time and you're on the iPad and I say, come on, it's dinner time, wash your hands, come on in, you can say no and you'll just get in trouble. You can say yes and you won't get in trouble and you'll come in. But more times than not, you should respectfully advocate for your position. And so if you in a kind, gentle voice say, hey, Dad, I'm in the middle of this level. It's really important to me. Can I just finish this and then I'll come to dinner? Like most of the time, I'm going to say, sure, like good job respectfully advocating for your position, compared to just the yes and no that a lot of us were raised on. And so whether it's our families or our businesses, I think there's a global shakeup that's happening. And that's why earlier on I said there's this messy middle, because the industrialists did give us something, both in whether it's parenting or just the amount of just stuff we have access to, and the logistics to get me an orange in northern Michigan in the middle of winter. Like that's amazing. And that model doesn't work for everything anymore, whether it's parenting or our businesses. And I think COVID has really made us globally say, do we have to keep working this way, or is there a different way?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that as I was reading through the book, that idea of like, either Joe is like, oh crap, the timing of this is really scary, or like, this is perfect. Of like, because yeah, there's been so much of like, okay, travel for the year canceled, like where we can do it all virtually. The obviously telehealth on the therapy side of things and medicine, and yeah, that like you said, it served us well. There was a purpose to it, but things are starting to shift and change. And I just loved like you kind of brought together all of these really amazing concepts of like, good to great and tribal leadership and those types of things. and really looking at, well, it doesn't have to be this way. There's a better option. But again, so many people were just stuck on like, that'll never work, or that's not what this is.
Well, I think that a lot
Yeah.
of times, people stick with what they've done because it's worked to a certain degree. It's been a B minus for most people, and it's like, are we going to shake up all of society over a B minus? That there's a big gamble there. But then when we start to see, okay, there's businesses that have made this switch and they're saving millions of dollars, and their healthcare costs are down, and their people are happier and staying longer, that then starts to make the business case for actually doing this new way of thinking in regards to how we schedule our lives and our staff. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think if we can make the business case in the same way that Henry Ford had to kind of make the business case to himself of, yeah, I'm going to make people go from working 10-hour days, 6 days a week to 40 hours. He had to make the business case to himself and say, this makes sense. If we sell X number of thousand more cars to our own staff, that helps our bottom line. And we're paying people less hours per week. And so, I mean, there's some very practical reasons that the 40-hour work week was really a good step. And I think we're seeing that now with, explosions in creativity in Silicon Valley when we see, people switch away from the typical work week, and we allow there to be that freedom for people to kind of match up their natural thinking in their body and the way that they're inspired and all of that.
Yeah. Again, just that buying into the, okay, I'm working my whole life for the gold watch at the end, and that's it. There's a punk band that I really like, ska band, Less Than Jake, and they have a song. I pulled it up. It's called "When Ambition," and talks about always wanting something more than 50 hours every week and a paid vacation on the Jersey shoreline. And yeah, just that idea of there's more out there. As you've been doing the podcast side of things and kind of gearing up for the book, which you said it drops October 5th, right?
Yeah, October 5th.
Okay. Have you been talking with entrepreneurs and business owners that are like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll take a look at this and see, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's crazy the doors that's opened and who's resonating with it. So last week I did the keynote for Nissan Infinity, and they did a bulk book buy of my book to give, company wide. And it was great because it was around mental health and stress, but then also around kind of the concepts of this book. And to just allow people to talk through, it was a Zoom call that I also had, some teachings in. But there was just so much positive energy around it, and people wanting to know more and wanting to learn more, and craving just like a feeling of settledness after a very tough 2020. I think that this book is going to continue to help big businesses like Nissan Infinity, or small individual practices. But it's definitely opening doors for me. I mean, by the time this releases, my interview on Smart Passive Income will have gone live. Entrepreneur on Fire, the One Thing podcast. So there's some bigger podcasts that are doing things on it, but Business Insider just recently quoted me. And so there's a lot of, I think, business interest beyond just the counseling space, which, I mean, I think for anyone that's listening, especially the therapists, we have skills that the world needs, and it goes so much farther beyond just the one-on-one counseling that we often do. That's important. I don't want to diminish that work. And, to have your skill set be only for one client at a time, most of us have a book in us that could really help the world. Most of us have a podcast in us that could help the world. And to really understand, the value that you bring. I mean, I'm seeing that now with things that to me seem very simple in the psychological world that in the business world, people are blown away by. And we all have these skills. And so it's not just like Joe Sanok, was great and got this book published. It's that we all have really amazing skills that we could level up in a different way.
Yeah. And I know you and I have talked before in terms of, I think I had mentioned when we spoke last, your TED Talk on vigilance decrement and Killing at Camp and Slow Down School, where you put into practice and help people kind of workshop the concepts you talk about in this book. When do you have KIC and Slow Down School coming up?
Yeah, so in 2021, October 13th through 17th is going to be Killing at Camp out in Estes Park, Colorado. So by the time this drops, it'll be just right around the corner. But we're actually going to be emailing our list, which won't be as relevant when this goes live. But we're emailing the list about how if people buy a certain number of books, they'll get a free ticket to Killing at Camp. And so a reason for in the future to be on our email list, because you get those super inside deals and stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in terms of website for the book?
Yeah, best landing page is joesanok.com/book. That'll take you right to the Thursday is the new Friday.com page. So it has all the information on individual buys, book bulk buys, kind of how to get it, how to get extra resources. During kind of this big launch at the beginning, we have a bunch of bonuses there. So workbooks, mastermind groups, things that if people buy more than one, they get access to. Because, we want to hit New York Times bestseller status. That's the goal.
Woohoo. Yeah, there you go. Well, again, I mean, just like you said, I think the work world is at that, okay, something has to change. And the question of, are we going to go back to the way things have always been done, or are we going to take this opportunity and actually evaluate it and make a shift to something that works better for today? So again, it seems perfectly timed. I'm really excited to see, how people grab a hold of it and what they do with it. I know for myself, my wife and I were talking after learning about the book and starting to read it of like, okay, how can I actually do this? What would that look like this summer, and trying to test out the water. So I'll be happy to report back. Unfortunately, I don't think I will save our family millions of dollars, unfortunately. But
you never know. I mean, it is interesting because like it was probably 5 summers ago that I started taking Fridays off in the summer as an experiment, then kept that, and then started taking Mondays off, and to see how much the time I spend actually working on things that will level things up compared to the things I dinked around with. I do think that by working less, it definitely helped me make way more money because I was doing the things that had the highest return on investment for my time. So you never know. You may not save millions, but you may make millions.
Here's hoping. Yeah.
My attorney would be like, put an asterisk there that it's not guaranteed.
Joe Sanok said that I would make millions. Yeah. Well, Joe, it's always a pleasure to have you on. I'll stay in touch with you and catch back up. Hopefully, New York Times best-selling author in the future. So thanks again.
Well, thanks so much for having me, John.
Take care. All right, OTC listeners, there you have it. Another episode done. Thank you for stopping by and checking it out. If you want to find out more about Joe Sanok, you can head over to joesanok.com. So that's JoeSanok. Or you can find the Practice of the Practice podcast at practiceofthepractice.com. So the Thursday is the new Friday book, launches October 5th. He has, Killing at Camp. He's got Slow Down School workshops. So you can check out those at the website. I mean, he's putting out content all the time. And the podcast, it covers pretty much everything. I mean, the guests that he has on, some of it's on mental health, some of it's on work stuff, some of it is on relationships. There's something for everybody. So do yourself a favor and give the podcast a listen. Next episode will be OTC episode 70, where I will be talking with my good friends Dan and Kristen Naylor about infant and pregnancy loss and the impact that has had on their life. So check it out next time. Take care.